Eerie pod villages where workers kept dying, half-built hospitals where people died and disappeared, and entire cities left standing with 0 people living in them. These are construction sites that had to be abandoned immediately. For a long time, this was known as one of the most mysterious places in Moscow. Construction on Hovrinskaya Hospital started in 1980. And stopped in 1985, and not because it was finished. The project was abandoned, leaving this huge star-shaped building unfinished. Some floors had open edges with no walls, not a safe place to explore, but for years it sat there rotting, and that's where all the disturbing stories started, because people did venture into this place. Aside from urban explorers, there was once said to be a group of Satan worshippers known as the Namaster sect, who used the abandoned hospital for their rituals. They were blamed for a bunch of disappearances in the area. According to the legend, police eventually launched a raid inside the hospital. Some versions say the cult were cornered and shot. Others say explosives were used to trap them in a basement hallway before the whole level was flooded. People also claim the place was haunted, not just creepy noises, but full apparitions and these strange cone-shaped figures moving through the empty halls. And some swore they heard children crying in empty rooms. Real tragedies happened here as well, though. Urban explorers ran into squatters who chased them out. People fell through missing floors. In 2005, a girl named Alexei Kryushkin died after jumping down an elevator shaft. The whole place was finally demolished in 2018. What you're looking at here is not an AI-generated image. This place used to exist. These are the Sanzhi UFO houses. Construction began in 1978 when a development group in Taiwan tried to build a futuristic beach resort made of these bright, multicolored pods. The design was pulled straight out of retro space-age architecture from the 60s and 70s, super eye-catching. The idea was to attract tourists and US military officers stationed in the area, but the whole place basically fell apart before anyone could ever spend a night there. By 1980, just 2 years in, everything stopped. They'd poured money into it, but the project kept bleeding cash, and then came the accidents. Multiple workers died during construction, and the site got such a bad reputation, stories about the land being cursed started to spread. The place became a ghost town almost instantly, and for decades, the strange-looking pod houses just sat there. By 2008, demolition finally started, and by 2010, the entire site was gone. This is one of the craziest, biggest abandoned construction projects ever, the Mir mine in Siberia. The Soviets started digging this mine back in 1957, deep in the frozen wilderness. Why? Diamonds. They struck a massive diamond pipe and they decided they were going to dig the deepest diamond mine in the world. And they succeeded. For 44 years, they kept digging deeper and wider, pulling out tons of rock. The hole they left behind is insane, almost 1,800 feet and wide enough for a city block. It was so big that the airspace above it was actually restricted. They said the downward airflow from the giant pit was strong enough to suck in and crash helicopters flying overhead. That's insane. The hole almost created its own weather system. The mine finally had to be shut down because of the impossible engineering. They kept running into the permafrost. The rock would thaw and the tunnels would flood, shift, and collapse. The final straw came in 2017 when a massive flood trapped over 100 workers down there. They got most of them out, but that was it. They abandoned the entire operation. So today, this massive gaping hole sits out in the middle of nowhere. Ryugyong Hotel, a classic case of starting fast and dying faster. North Korea began building it in 1987, planning to open a 105-story mega hotel with rotating restaurants. It was supposed to be ready for an international festival in 1989, and they rushed the construction. Problems started piling up almost immediately. By the time they reached the full height in 1992, the country's economy had collapsed. Soviet support dried up. There were material shortages everywhere, so the entire project was halted. From 1992 to 2008, this gigantic pyramid sat as a hollow shell. The windows hadn't been put in yet, there were no interior walls, no wiring. What was supposed to be a big, extravagant attraction became a big, obnoxious eyesore dominating the skyline, a constant reminder of failure. And in 2008, a foreign company stepped in and paid to cover the outside with glass so that from a distance it looked finished, but the inside is still empty even today. After almost 4 decades, it's still one of the largest abandoned construction projects. In 1990, construction started on Sathorn Unique Tower, right in the middle of Bangkok's real estate boom. was supposed to be a luxury high-rise packed with condos and all the flashy stuff rich buyers were looking for. For a few years, the place was rising. By the mid-90s, it was already towering over the river. But then the 1997 Asian financial crisis hit. Thailand's economy was one of the first to collapse, and the developer behind the tower went bankrupt almost instantly. With financing wiped out, construction stopped overnight, and after that, the building turned into something else entirely. Urban explorers climbed in it for years, calling it the Ghost Tower. The unfinished hallways, the empty elevator shafts, and open edges also made it one of the most dangerous spots in the city. In 2014, a tourist was found dead inside, so it was sealed off. It's still standing though, more than 30 years after construction started. Burj al Babas is one of the strangest abandoned construction projects in the world because it wasn't just one building that got left behind, it was hundreds. Construction started in 2014 when a Turkish developer started building a community of these identical houses that sort of looked like small castles. Each one looked like a downsized European palace. I mean, look at this place. Tell me you wouldn't want to live here. It looks like the town from Shrek. I mean, every house being identical is kind of creepy, but the homes themselves are lovely. Buyers from the Middle East were supposed to snap them up as vacation homes, but then the economy crashed. Turkey went into a major financial downturn in 2018. The developer filed for bankruptcy, so construction stopped, and all these half-finished castles sat there with no buyers and no money to complete them. By 2019, the whole project was officially abandoned, and because the houses were all identical and all unfinished, the place looks like some kind of fake movie set. Rows of empty fairy tale looking castles with no people. It's pretty surreal. Kangbashi is one of the most famous ghost cities in China. Construction began around 2003 when the regional government in Inner Mongolia pushed for this massive new district, packed with museums, government buildings, and apartments. By 2008, huge public buildings, stadiums, and apartment complexes were completed, but the people never came. The original plan expected around 300,000 residents, but in the late 2000s, everyone kept buying apartments as investments instead of actually moving in. When reporters visited in 2009 and 10, they filmed huge highways with no cars, empty malls, and miles of these finished high-rises that nobody lived in. Suddenly, Kangbashi became one of the most famous ghost cities in the world. Goldin Finance 117 in China is the tallest abandoned skyscraper in the world. Construction officially started in 2008, just before the Beijing Olympics, with the idea of creating a super tall tower shaped like a giant diamond at the top. It was supposed to be the centerpiece of a shiny new financial district with luxury hotels, offices, and high-end apartments. For the first few years, things moved pretty fast. By 2015, the tower actually topped out at its full height, but then everything fell apart. The developer, Goldin Properties, ran into massive financial trouble. Their other projects were collapsing, investors were backing out, and the company started losing money. By 2016, work slowed to a crawl. By 2017, it basically stopped. The building had no interior, there were no working elevators, no completed facade on the upper levels. It was a skyscraper that literally scraped the clouds, but it was totally pointless. There was and still is nothing inside it. Construction on the Centro Financiero Confinances, which everyone calls the Torre de David, started in 1990. It was supposed to be a massive financial complex with a hotel, offices, huge banking center, all financed by Venezuelan investor David Brillenberg. It reached around 45 stories by 1993, and then everything went sideways. In 1993, Brillenberg died unexpectedly. A year later, in 1994, Venezuela's banking system collapsed in the country's worst financial crisis in decades. So with no money and no leadership, the project was scrapped. Workers walked away, leaving these exposed floors, open elevator shafts, and rebars sticking out of the unfinished edges. The building never got windows or a facade. For over a decade, it just sat there completely empty. But in 2007, something very unusual happened. People started moving in. Thousands of families who were displaced by housing shortages started occupying the tower floor by floor. They built shops inside, they ran electricity using hacked cables, people were driving motorcycles up the ramps. By 2014, the government started relocating everyone, but the tower is still standing there, unfinished to this day. Burj el Murr started getting built in 1970. Developers planned this massive 40-story office tower. would become one of the most modern buildings in Beirut. For a few years, everything went smoothly. The building was almost ready for interior work by 1975. But in April of that year, the Lebanese Civil War broke out, and that was the end of the project. Work stopped immediately, and the tower became a strategic sniper position. Different factions used it throughout the war, so it just got battered by decades of conflict. Even after the war ended in 1990, the tower wasn't restored or completed. The ownership was tied up in legal disputes, so it just sat there, looming over the city, and to this day, Burj el Murr is still sitting there unfinished. I've been your host, James. I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.